Civil Service Committee meeting, October 22nd, 2013. Councilmember Russell.
Present.
Councilmember Scanlon.
Present.
Councilmember Locurdo.
Present.
Going to appoint Councilmember Locurdo to the committee this morning for a forum. First item.
Item number 1, appoint lieutenant.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, second by Councilmember Locurdo.
Item number 2, notices of appointments, temporary, provisional, permanent.
Motion to receive and file.
Item 2, motion to receive and file, second by Councilmember Locurdo.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second by Councilmember Locurdo.
I tried.
Right there. Finance Committee meeting, October 22nd, 2013. Councilmember Scanlon.
Present.
Councilmember Locurdo.
Present.
Councilmember Russell. Quorum's present. Item number 1, City of Buffalo investment policy.
Motion is to table items 1 and 2.
Motion to table items 1 and 2, second by Councilmember Russell.
And the motion now is to take items number 4 and 5 from the table.
Motion to take items 4 and 5 from the table, seconded by Councilmember Russell.
Item number 4, audit report, contract for operations of Erie Basin Marina.
What we have in front of us today is the report from the Comptroller's Office for the Erie Basin Marina from the operating years 2008 to 2012, as well as the response from the Department of Public Works. Joining us today, we have the operators of the Erie Basin Marina Brandon Services and their representatives, as well as some representatives from the Comptroller's Office. If the Comptroller's Office would like to get started, maybe give us a brief overview of the audit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could you just state your name?
Patrick Curry, Executive Assistant to the Comptroller. I'd like to remind the Common Council that the Comptroller submitted an audit plan in the beginning of his term that said the focus of his term would be to focus on audits that have a financial impact on the city and that would focus on maximizing revenues and minimizing expenditures. This was done to ensure that audit resources were devoted to issues that would have a fiscal impact in the city and help to cut our costs and increase our revenues. As we all know, balancing budgets are increasingly difficult this time with rising pension costs and health care costs and flat revenues. So any effort to increase revenues and minimize expenditures could have a very good fiscal impact and allow us to fund other projects that may be on the chopping block if these audits weren't taking place. So this audit in particular is actually very unique in that it has ramifications for both revenues and expenditures. The Erie Basin Marina is a major asset of the city of Buffalo. It's one of our premier waterfront destinations and a source of revenue for the city. It's an $8 million parcel of land, and we want to make sure that the city is getting the maximum amount of revenue for this asset. But it also has an effect on the expenditures of the city. Just in the past 2 years alone, the city has borrowed more than $2 million for capital improvements to the Erie Basin Marina. These capital improvements are currently underway, and it will create an even greater destination on Buffalo's waterfront and increase this asset for the city of Buffalo. So the goal of this audit was to make sure that the expenditures were done in a way that's going to maximize the revenue for the city and making sure that the taxpayers get the most for their money. I would like to thank our audit team who have joined me today. City Auditor Kevin Kaufman is with us, as well as our field auditors Sherelle Seif and Carlos Kostner. They did an outstanding job in this audit, which focused on the 2008 through 2012 seasons of the Erie Basin Marina. The findings of this audit found that $343,000 is owed to the city of Buffalo and the taxpayers by Brand-On Services, the operator of the Erie Basin Marina. So I'll just go break down this figure. The first category is base sales. Primarily, these are food sales at the Hatch restaurant, but they also include sundry sales at the Ship store. So the audit found that $164,000 worth of food sales were not reported to the city. And the food sales, the base sales that were reported to the city were done at the wrong percentage calculation of rent due to the city. They were supposed to pay us 7 to 13% on a sliding scale of food sales. The city only received 7 to 10% on a sliding scale. With the wrong calculation of the rent and the unreported food sales, the total owed to the city for food sales is $44,000. Another major component of the Erie Basin Marina is fuel sales. Now, I just want to start off that when our auditors found that 20,000 of gallons of gas was not accounted for, Brand-On's fuel supplier said that they supplied Brand-On with 383,000 gallons of fuel. Brand-On reported to the city that it sold just over 362,000 gallons of fuel. This 20,000 gallons of gas represents 6,000 due to the city in rent calculations on fuel sales, but the total due to the city for fuel sales is $82,000. Now, I just would like to address there was an issue with the city being paid the majority of the $82,000 is because the city was paid the wrong rate of fuel sales. According to this contract approved by this Common Council, Brand-On was to pay the city 10% of fuel sales. The city has only received 10 cents per gallon. Anyone who's purchased gas recently can tell you that 10% and 10 cents a gallon are two vastly different numbers. This was done unilaterally by Brand-On, and it is my understanding that they claim that they have a verbal agreement from former Commissioner Joe Giambra. While we cannot verify that this verbal agreement was ever given, it really doesn't matter because this honorable body, the Common Council, is the only one with authority to change this contract. Common Council did never change the contract, and in a 2009 audit released by the Comptroller's office, the change from 10 cents a gallon, or the change from 10% of fuel sales to 10 cents a gallon was, it said, the 2009 audit said that that was unauthorized and that Brandon should be paying the city 10% because the change was never authorized by the Common Council. That recommendation was subsequently ignored by the operator, and from the subsequent years, 2008, 2012, we still were only getting 10 cents a gallon instead of 10%. Now, the operator is fully aware that Common Council approval is needed before changing the agreement. And in fact, in 2004, the operator got Common Council approval for a change that benefited them. It was an $87,000 annual deduction in rent for maintenance. Common Council approved this, and the agreement was changed to allow them to deduct $87,000 worth of rent in exchange for the upkeep and maintenance of the marina. Now, as a part of that agreement, the $87,000 represents the total amount of maintenance deductions that is allowed under this contract. But this audit had found that additional deductions were taken in excess of the $87,000 per year, totaling in the 5-year span of the audit $224,000 in unauthorized deductions for maintenance efforts that the city did not request, that the Common Council did not approve, and was not part of the agreement and should not have been deducted from the rent. Now, I just would like to close with the recommendations of this audit. The first being that we demand immediate payment. That has been done. We have issued a invoice to Brandon for $343,000. And if this payment is not made in a timely manner, the Comptroller's office recommends that this contract be terminated for non-payment. The other recommendation is that this contract is not, if payment is made, that the contract extension is not approved by this Common Council. And the third recommendation is that we look for another vendor to run all the operations at the marina, and that the Public Works Department split up the operation so that one RFP is issued for fuel sales, one RFP is issued for marina operation, and one RFP is issued for hatch and ship store. I'd just like to point out that 17 minutes before this scheduled Finance Committee meeting, we received a response from Brandon to our audit. Our audit team has looked over this, but we haven't had a good amount of time to read through this audit, read through this response. So I can't really discuss what's in here, but I would like to remind this council that this audit was filed and was a part of the public record and access to any citizen who wanted to come in, was filed with the council on September 12th. So being it over a month since then, about 40 days, it's unfortunate that we didn't have more time to look over this response, but we're happy to look it over, and if there's an issue that we can address today, we can do that. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to discuss this audit, and I'd happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Before we get into any questions or anything like that, I'd like to afford the Brandon Services an opportunity to respond, then we can get into some questioning.
Thank you. Mark Carney on behalf of Brandon Services. Let me respond first and foremost to Mr. Curry's comments about receiving our response this morning. The city had over 4 months to perform its audit. They chose to release that audit to the public, ignoring the notice section of the lease and not sending it to my clients. We did not receive the notes which went with the audit until approximately a week ago. So in view of that, we've had 4 weeks to review what they've had almost 4 months to prepare. So I don't think our response is untimely by any means.
Mr. Carney, just one thing. We did provide you those notes before the previous Finance Committee meeting, which was 2 weeks ago.
I apologize. 2 weeks ago. Let's address this thing one section at a time. First and foremost, with respect to the $225,000 that are claimed in maintenance, the agreement that was reached, which is our Exhibit I in our responding page, going back to March 8th of 2004, where Brandon agreed to take on a portion of the maintenance at the Erie Basin Marina for compensation of $87,000 per year. That is a small part of the maintenance which is required at this multi-million-dollar facility. As everybody here is aware, this is, it has become a premier destination. If anybody in this chamber believes that a entity the size of the Erie Basin Marina in its entirety could be maintained for $87,000 a year, they are sorely mistaken. The Commissioner of Public Works has approached Brandon over the years on a continuing basis and has asked them to perform certain maintenance duties to keep the marina in not only good working condition, but a safe environment. This is an interest not only to the city, but also to Brandon, as we are required to insure this entire property. There is a clause in the lease which we rely on, that is 5E and J, which are attached to our response, which allows us to deduct rent from the rent, maintenance, which would maintain the property in the condition that it must be maintained to be safe and operable. That we have done that. But all of these items, the $225,000 in maintenance, these are not maintenance items which Brandon has suggested or brought forth or done of its own volition. These are all items which the Commissioner of Public Works has contacted Brandon, asked them to perform, and they have performed. And it should be noted, as we state in our response, we perform these maintenance with no labor costs to the city. What we've charged and what we've deducted has been the cost of materials and rentals only. And most of those are contained in exhibits in our response. And if you look quite carefully, those are all signed off by the Commissioner of Public Works. So we are in our right to deduct those amounts pursuant to the contract. The other point of contention appears to be the sale of gas. Back in 2004, we began negotiations with then Commissioner Giambra to discuss the fact that as the price of gas escalated, we could no longer be competitive at the 10% rate. As the spokesman for the Comptroller's office very aptly just noted, we've all been to the fuel. We've all been to the gas station. We all know what the cost of fuel is. When the cost of fuel began to rise above $3 and $3.50 a gallon, the addition of 35 cents a gallon was not feasible. We could not sell the gas at a number which would remain competitive. Back in 2005, a letter was sent to then Commissioner Giambra outlining that to remain competitive, we would have to amend the contract and go to 10 cents a gallon versus 10%. This was picked up in the 2007 audit. It was discussed before this body in 2009. When we filed our response to the 2007 audit, we again outlined that it's more competitive to pay the city 10 cents a gallon for every gallon delivered rather than attempt to add a 10% charge on. In 2009, that would be the July 29th, I believe, meeting, 2009, this Finance Committee adopted and accepted Brandon's response. And our response, quite frankly, contained the 10 cents per gallon. And we have, since 2006, and certainly since 2009, reported and paid the city 10 cents a gallon for every gallon that we sold. If you review the 2009 meeting, it was rather clear that the intention after that audit was that there would be a time when Brandon and representatives from the Commissioner of Public Works, the Harbor Master, would get together and attempt to renegotiate or form an addendum which would formalize not only the 10 cents per gallon, deeming that this body accepted the 10 cents a gallon when it accepted our response and did not give us or surcharge us. That was a message sent to Brandon that if this body accepted our response to its 2007 audit, acknowledging and accepting the payment of 10 cents a gallon with no surcharge, then certainly we would believe that we had this body's approval to continue from 2009 or 2007 forward, paying the 10 cents a gallon. So I humbly would ask that the Comptroller's office review that tape of that session in 2009, wherein the Finance Committee accepted the response of the 2007 audit from Brandon, and we considered that, quite frankly, to be the acceptance of the modification to 10 cents a gallon. Moving forward, and if it is accepted that we are paying 10 cents a gallon, there is no missing gas. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we own the gas. We've paid you the 10 cents a gallon on everything that we've used, or strike that we've purchased. But using the notes from the Comptroller's office and going back over all of our notes, we've discovered where the quote-unquote missing gasoline is. The missing gasoline is not missing. It consisted of over-rings by the youth that work the cash registers and the pumps. Those over-rings, although some were accepted by the Comptroller's office, most were not, with no explanation given how they accepted over-rings or didn't accept over-rings. Between the over-rings and the amounts that are left in the tank at the end of the year, then considering that there is personal use or gasoline that is not sold, therefore not subject to the 10%, in our response, we clearly cover any and all gas sales and all purchases of gas in there. That we do agree with the audit in that there was a miscalculation in going from 10% to 13% of sales. And we acknowledge that we do owe the city approximately $27,000, and we stand ready to make that payment at the city's option. And again, please remember, our response is based and assumes that the numbers used by the Comptroller's office are correct, because we simply did not have the time to fully re-audit all of our own books. That would take us approximately the same amount of time that it took the city. And they started the audit on, I believe, the first week of April of 2013, and submitted their report on September 12th of 2013. So we've adopted their numbers and put in where we think that we are. We would ask you to review our response carefully. It's very clear, and it was very clear at the meeting that occurred in July of 2009, that there are a lot of gray areas that are contained in this lease, and that to a great extent, this entity has outgrown the terms of the lease. But let's not forget that when Brandon took over this property in 2001, they were doing approximately $400,000 in sales. And in 2012, they did $1.2 million in sales. That they have grown this project, that they have taken over this project, and that the city has made far more money with Brandon running it than they ever made prior to Brandon coming in. A great part of that is the keeping of the competitive pricing for fuel. The people in Erie County, especially voters, many of whom are here today to support Brandon and how they run this entity, are not going to pay 39 cents a gallon more than they would pay at the marina around the corner. We're not talking about pumping 20 gallons into a car. We're talking about pumping an average of 125 gallons into a boat. So there is a huge difference in price as you look at these competitiveness. And we frankly agree with the comptrollers as they told us that we're gaining no greater profit than anybody else is in the area. We're not selling it for any more or any less than anyone else. They found the average profit to be between 15 and 20 cents a gallon. We're at 18 cents a gallon. That we believe we've done and acted in good faith. This Brandon voluntarily accepted the living wage at a cost of $90,000 per year that they ate when the city asked them to. They voluntarily accepted to take over the security when the city asked them to. They've acted in concert every single day with the Commissioner of Public Works in performing the duties that, quite frankly, were never budgeted, and there is no budget for the Erie Basin Marina maintenance, even though it's been brought up on a yearly basis. So we would ask that this body review our response carefully. We would ask that this body listen to the tape of the July 2009 finance meeting, and we would ask this body to accept and allow us not only to continue as the operator going forward, but we would ask that we abide by the Finance Committee meeting of 2009 and begin to renegotiate and put into place parameters by which maintenance can be done, so we all know what the costs are. And by the way, just so everybody is clear, one of the largest expenditures was the building of the beach and the cleanup of the beach in 2008, which was not addressed in the 2007 audit, but is addressed in this audit. And that cleanup and that building of the beach was absolutely discussed in the 2009 meeting, and that Finance Committee accepted that as a legitimate deduction from the rent. So I would encourage this body to please go back, review our notes, review our response before any determination is made as to whether or not you go forward or whether or not under the lease you opt to go towards arbitrating this dispute. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. I want to open it up for questions.
Mr. Chairman Scanlon, can I just have an opportunity to respond to some of the issues?
Absolutely.
I'd like to thank Mr. Carney for, offering to pay the difference in the miscalculation for base sales. However, I did not hear the $164,000 in unreported sales addressed. And to do with rent deductions, according to this communication to the council, approved, dated March 8th, 2004. Sorry. Brandon Services would assume the responsibility for maintaining the entire marina, including the lawn and garden areas. In exchange, Brand-On would reduce the payment to the city by $87,000. Now, I understand that,